Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm looking at two Pelikan pens with you guys, and this will not be a straight comparison, but I will throw in some like comparison elements. And it's not a straight comparison because these pens are not identical like copies. So I'm talking about a Pelikan 140, which is a vintage Pelikan, and the Pelikan 120n, I believe, which is a remake or reintroduction of an old pen. And it's a reintroduction of the 120 and not of the 140. I do not have a 120. So I'm looking at the 140 and the 120, the M120 with you. The 140 is exactly the same in size as the old 120. So I thought it would be a fair size comparison. They look very similar. There is a difference, and that is that the old 140 has a 14 karat nib, and the 120, the vintage one, did not have a gold nib. So I'm gonna look at the clips, at the finishes with you guys, and just show you how they are different, tell you what I like about them, which I like best, etc. So it's not really a comparison, but I'll show you the differences. All right, let's switch the shot. All right, here we are with the close-up shot of the Pelikan 140, which is the vintage, and then the Pelikan M120n, which is a reintroduction of a vintage pen, the 120, which was seen as a school pen. And this particular pen, so the new model was introduced in 2016. As you can see, this one is the blue one. There is a green black one, which really looks like the old school school pen, which is really nice. But this blue one caught my eye and it was on sale, so that's why I bought this one. I'm a big fan of Pelikan pens, new and old. So if there's any good deals to be found, I will go after it. So this pen has gold hardware. It has that classic Pelikan clip, which is quite flexible, quite nice to use. It says Pelikan Germany on the cap band. The piston knob is not completely flush. As you can see, there's a little bit of a rim here, which is normal for these pens. The vintage ones had that, so they actually made it like directly the same. They copied that. Then we have the Pelikan bill. I think it's quite hard to see because it's stamped in there, like engraved. And when you look at the vintage one, it is also, let's focus, engraved, but there's also color there, so it's a little easier to see. Nib on this one is a gold-plated steel nib, and this particular edition has nice scroll work on the nib. It's not something we're used to from Pelikan steel nibs, but there's some nice scroll work on there. I have a medium nib on this. Nice ink window right here. Very useful to see the ink level, as you can see. And that is like a small overview of this pen. If we look at the vintage one, we can see that it is slightly smaller. Let's be in frame. Slightly smaller than the new one. So the 140, so my vintage one, is exactly the same size as the vintage 120. So this one, the modern version, is bigger than the vintage version. Don't know why that is. I can't really find anything on it. There might be no reason for it, except maybe that it is easier to use when it's a little longer. But yeah, so the size difference is there. This pen is of course not perfect. There's scratches on the cap, micro scratches, and the barrel's not like perfectly striped anymore. There's like I don't know if that will focus. There's like tiny imperfections there, but this pen was made, I think, between 1955 and 1964, so it has some age. What this pen also has is like that lip near the piston knob, so that's very similar to the modern one. Clips look very, very identical. I think this one is slightly slimmer than the modern one. Also very usable. Gold hardware. This is a green stripe version, of which there are plenty to be found, I believe. There's some other colors, but those are harder to be found. This particular pen still has the nib size sticker on there. It says K extra fine, it means Kugel, and that means it's a rounded nib. It's a Kugel extra fine. As I showed you before, here's the Pelikan, if it wants to focus, on the top with his chicks. And then when you uncap it, there's no ink window. So the original 120 may have had an ink window. This is not. I can actually check that for you. So this nib is a gold nib. It's 14 karat gold. It is the old type of gold nib by Pelikan. Black grip, black piston knob, and then the striped. You sometimes see that the striped finish has some discoloration. This one looks to be in fine order, which is nice. And it says it's an extra fine nib. It's not really an extra fine nib because it's slightly bouncy. This feed, the old feeds made by Pelikan were ebonite feeds. This is also an ebonite feed. It has a really, I love that striped feed. It's really interesting. This is a steal from eBay. Of course, I love to troll eBay. So yeah, main difference here, size, nib, material, and then ink window. I just checked, the 120 did have an ink window. So if you're looking for a vintage 120, you will find one with an ink window, so that will be comparable. I think we should move on to a writing sample. And this pen is the new one, so the modern one with that scroll work. I don't really know what ink is in here. It's a thing I struggle with sometimes because I have so many pens inked. Okay, this is the Pelikan M120n with a medium nib. I know it's one of the Lamy Crystal inks. Might be azurite. But I'm not completely sure. I know it's the one that looks like Diamine Bilberry, which is one of my favorite inks. This nib is like super smooth. I have no complaints about this nib. It is great. I wouldn't say it's exciting, not that special. And this pen was not super cheap. So this pen actually cost more than a regular M200 because it's like a special edition. Is it worth that? If you like the vintage look, yes. You can upgrade it with a gold nib, but then it would set you back like 300 bucks. So it's up to you if it's worth it. If I'm honest, I would say scour the web for a vintage. Turning my notebook around. So this is a Pelikan 140 with a Kugel extra fine nib. And it doesn't really look like an extra fine IMO, and maybe a Western fine. Ink is Pelikan, Star, Ruby. Zoom in a little bit, sorry guys. Star, Ruby. So this is normal writing. And then you add some pressure, ink at that. So I can try that with this modern steel nib. And it's not the stiffest nib I've ever used, but it does not feel comfortable to use that amount of pressure. And with this pen, the vintage, it does feel comfortable. So it's a little more exciting to use that nib. Anyway, if you have any questions about either of these pens or about anything else in general, please let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.